So, John Spencer, this time with a special video of the study of the Muan Sarn, of the amulets of the Khun Phaen, Luang Tim, made in Nua Dang, so all in reddish, orangish, pinkish tone color Muan Sarn powders. This is actually a picture on a certificate of one example, which I decided to use. You'll see it go blurry now because I'm using a lens, and so this lens magnifies, but you'll only see what I hold close to it because it's macro, and that's so I can zoom and we can study the Muan Sarn of, I believe I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, about 18 Khun Phaen also in Nua Dang, different kinds. So this is classified as Nua Dang, which means red. As you can see, it's more orangish than some. Some are more pinkish, some are more orangish, some are very deep red, some have a ground, dry, powdery appearance. Some of them have, how I would say, the rubbly khao niao suk appearance, the sticky rice, lots of sticky rice. Some have a very more clear cut and fine powder with less sticky rice, but always some sticky rice. Some have sai re tong kam, gold powders. Some you will see the greenish tone of pong prai guman rising up, which you can see in this. This is very fossilized stony. If it's stony and looks fossilized like marble, with this tak langa, the kind of crackly ivory effect, crackled ivory effect. I used to call it crackled sesame because nga means sesame seed, but nga also means ivory. So when I first studied amulets, tak lai nga, I used to call it crackled sesame. Yeah, you think you know Thai language, and then as you go deeper, you realize that, oh, nga is also ivory, and when you learn how ivory crackles when it gets old, you realize, oh, they mean the crackling of ivory, because sesame seeds don't crackle. So why would it be called crackled sesame seed? Lai nga, sesame pattern, or lai nga, ivory pattern. And so you have to conclude that tak lai nga, broken sesame lines or broken ivory lines, which you can see here in the chest, in the Sankati sash. But on Prat Somdet Wat Rakang you'll see a lot of. So I would call this one in Nua Som. And the Khun Phaen, Luang Tim community, they tend to simplify things much less than the Tapajang community, the Ban Khai community, make it easier to define. So this is all called Nua Dang or Nua Som, Nua Luang, red color, black color. But I would like to show that there is a big difference in the Muan Sarn when you look at many different examples of Nua Dang, and of course how they've been kept atmospheric conditions. Some people might be working in a mine underground and then living in a hut in a very moist jungle at night. So I'll be going down into a dry, gaseous mining tunnel and wearing a Khun Phaen or a Somdet or a Takrot. And another guy might work in an office for 30 years and wear it. The amulet over time will change differently and have different appearances. This one, as you can see, has the code Sala and the code Sam, code 3, which I call code Pa, because actually this way it is either the letter 3 in Sanskrit or the letter P in Khom. And considering we use Khom for Thai Buddha magic, Khom, Sanskrit inscriptions, this would be the letter P. And it was made, the code stamp, or the idea for this is not made with code stamp, it's inscribed with the hand, yeah, was from the artisan of Luang Tim, Chang Patana Anugun, Patana, P for Patana. So this is the com letter P for Patana Anugun, who was the guy who made the devotee who made the number 3 code stamp, which is a letter P code stamp for Patana, to stamp on the on Palagkik, because he made the first official edition of Palagkik of Lumputim. So this is in Som, and you can see the Muan Sarn. Can I zoom more? No, I'm fully zoomed now. You can see the Muan Sarn. Whoops. The Muan Sarn and the details. This does have Saire Tongkham. You can see some gold powder a little bit stuck, where they put some Naman Pajau Taksin oil in the block press, and when they put the wet clay in and press it down, the oil with the gold flags in will stick to it. But here on the top you can see always, I would say, have a ridge, sometimes even called Nuagan, extra meat. On the edges where it's still been dripping wet clay, and they pull it out of the block press, and sometimes on some of them you will see they folded it over even on the back, because there was such a long drip as they pull it out this way, and the clay, some of it, sometimes you get a little lip dripping down, and these are the lips, just the edges where it's been pulled out of the block press. Now you can see the hardening of the clay, especially on the protruding parts of amulets, such as the Yan Gabok Kwai or Gabong Kwai, or Yan Prabhupada Ha Praong, or Yan Ong Prat, depending how you want to call it. 5 Dhyani Buddha Yantra, or the Buddha Yantra, yeah, or the 5 Buddhas Yantra, or the crossed clubs Yantra, crossbar Yantra. You can see, and you can see the Pong Prai Guman rising up to the surface. On the edges of the lines of the Yan, you can see greenish, whitish powder around. Wherever you have protrusions or lettering, raised relief upon the amulet, you will see formations of the finest powders within the Muan Sarn rising to the surface. As the amulet dries, the fine powders get pushed up, and the Suan Yap, the more gross, thicker pieces and chunks of Muan Sarn, remain within. Sometimes a piece gets pushed up as well. Depends on atmospheric reactions. And this is part of the beauty of amulets as they age and take on character. Yeah, so I would say this is Nơ Som. Yeah, and that was, many people know what I think about certificates. That it's just a piece of paper with somebody's opinion, and they say it's real according to their belief. But I can do that. I can take a photo of this and make one of these and put my name on it and write it and say it's real. But a piece of paper and a certificate doesn't make it real. It's nice, makes you feel more confident if you know nothing, but that's not my school of thought. My school of thought is to teach you to recognize and conclude yourselves if it is real or not, and if the logic of did they really make them, and were they made in which year, and do the aging characteristics pass, understanding why this one has a more marbled, fossilized appearance and why Grang, and why this one has a more dry, powdery, sandy appearance, yeah, which would be Jat Hang. Why do some have a very smooth surface around, and why do some have much more bubbly? The presence of sticky rice, knowing the ingredients of how to recognize grayasad, puffed rice, or khao niao sok, blessed sticky rice, how to recognize pong prai kuman, how to recognize Wan Dok Tong, Boon Kin Mak, Wan Sabu Luat. This one, the reason it's orange is because it has both Boon Kin Mak, the cement used to chew areca beetle nut, which is pink, yeah, pinkish red, not dark red like you see some dark red ones. They are Wan Sabu Luat. And the reason this is orange is because it is mixed with my opinion, because everything is just somebody's opinion. It's an expert opinion, but it's still just an opinion. Same as the Tarpajan, same as the Siam Amulet Society, same as the Bankai Society. I have an opinion, just as does every judge and expert. So an expert opinion, but it's nothing more than that. You decide from your studies. My studies tell me my opinion and my conclusion. If you agree with my studies, you look at all the other experts' studies and theories and testaments. Unfortunately, you're not going to find much, because most of them don't tell anything. Why? Because they don't know anything more than just the pimp has to have a little point here and slight little lean, and this pillar here has to have a little dimple here. But they don't know about each Muan Sarn, or which atmospheric conditions caused a Somdet Bangkon Prom to have lots of crab growth mildew, or another one to look clean, because they don't know that 3 floods over about 20 or 30 years caused the ones in the middle of the pile to have the water go up and down many times, and so they had lots of certain kind of mildew. The ones on the top stayed dry more often, so hardly had any, and the ones on the bottom had lots because they were almost always submerged. So Prat Somdet Wat Bangkon Prom, just to digress from the Chedi hiding place chamber, you can have 3 main kinds of crab, of the mildews that form upon the surface, which will tell you which part of the pile they were in. Lots of crab means from the bottom of the pile, always submerged under the flooded water. So lots of that stuff, mildew, appeared. Some with broken mildew, like broken bubbles of boiling tofu milk. They call it broken tofu milk bubbles. Means that it has formed these craters. That's because of the water level rising and dropping within the Chedi stupa, and causing the mildew to break. And those on the top were mainly clean. So that's just to explain how different atmospheric conditions can change the appearance. So this one, first of all, its appearance of this rocky, rubbly, not rubbly, I mean it's smooth and fine detailed, it's fine powders, but it's mixed with Wan Dok Tong, golden flower, yellow golden flower herbal powders, which is also from the ground leaves of the herb, not just the flower. Wan Dok Tong. Wan is the leaf, the Dok Tong is the flower, the dok. The Wan is the leaves of the herb, and the dok is the flower. And the Wan itself, when you dry it, it turns yellow. So when you mix this yellow with the pinkish Boon Kin Mak, cement for eating beetle areca nut, which most Thai monks eat, and they make lukewarm powder balls with it, and they use the chewed areca nut to make powders with. So this would be areca nut and the cement for areca nut from Lumbu Tim, mixed with Wan Dok Tong, golden herb, yeah, powders, and that gives it, instead of a pure red, more of an orangey tone, yeah, and less of the khao niao silk visible, because Wan Dok Tong is a finer powder and Boon Kin Mak is a finer powder. Whereas if this was in Wan Sabu Luat, which is a much deeper red powder, blood red, that's a much more stony, a different size pigment molecule, different shape pigment molecule, and it hardens much more like marble even than this, which you can see there is a presence of some. They've mixed some because it has a marble texture, but it's you will see when I show you a dark color Nua Dang. Yeah, and this one has Sai Re Tong Kham gold flakes on it, which if I take this light off and let you see it in the natural light, that is its true, actually not, but close to its true color. It's very hard to see the gold flakes, very hard, because I'm using indoor lighting. You can see the code Salah and the hand inscribed number 3, and the aging of the drying along the edges of the, where it's been pulled out of the block press, you can see. So, better get on to another one to not go on forever. After looking at this one, we'll just use the photo from the certificate to get a really nice close-up look. And as you can see, Khao Niao Suk is present. This marbled Nurgreng effect you can see in the sockets, in the recesses. In the recesses where you have protruding areas, raised areas, that's where the Phong Prai Guman and the finer powders will be pushed up. In the recesses around between the hands, around the arms, in the armpits, around the edges. And you can see the gold flakes stuck onto the clay. Yeah. The Guman. You see the reddish, almost pinkish, that's because of the areca powders. So, now we're going to have a look at Ong Ti Song, as they say in the Thai amulet world, Buddha amulet number 2 in this collection, which is also certificated. Not that it makes a difference. What makes a difference is knowing and seeing the Muan Sarn and which pin it is and that it's real. Because a certificate, if you know enough and you can conclude it's real, you can take a photo and print this and sign your name and say this is real, if you are an accepted expert. And even if you're not, if you follow the teachings and you learn and you agree, if you agree with my rhetoric, then you will look yourself and say, I don't need a certificate. I don't, but people like them. Ones with certificates sell better than ones without, and ones without I sell a bit cheaper. So Ong Ti Song 1441. They shouldn't be cheaper because it's just as real, but of course, yes, a certificate in this world, on the worldly sense, has a value. And for those who don't know or have doubts or fears and don't trust and fear of fake and really don't know or can't study with me and figure it out themselves, what makes sense, then yes, a certificate does make sense. But I do like to say all it is the opinion and the signature of a person, and if they know less than me or equal to me, what do I need it for? So I always tell people, some people ask me for stuff I don't have a certificate for, if I can make a certificate for it. Right now, since COVID actually, most associations do not take by post except Tapajan, and they can't do the amulet shows, so in the moment it's hardly possible. But I don't want to do it anyway, because if you don't believe me when I say it's real, why are you going to believe somebody else? That means buy from them. If you want a Tapajan certificate, then you buy from them, but you'll pay 10 times the price. Because if you buy one from me, if you buy this that's certificated and you send it to the Tapajan, they'll send it back. They'll take 25 bucks off you for looking at it, and you'll have to tell them what it is. As I said in the previous amulet we looked at, they'll charge you for it, and then they'll tell you, no, it's not what you said it is, hoping that you think that means it's fake. Or why do you have to tell them what it is? Why can't you send it to them and say, can you tell me what this is? Like people send me. And I say, that's a Khun Phaen 15 or a first edition 2510 BE coin. And another reason I don't like to send is because the last time I sent a 2510 BE first edition Luang Tim coin to an association, it was, I won't say which one, it was defined as 2512, which means that the judge in the association knew less than me about which year it was released in. And so, what's the point, you know? But anyway, so here we are with 1441, we're looking at Nua Dang. This one has a much more rubbly appearance than the previous one. So and darker red, so you can see the presence of Wan Sabu Luat. And it also has this dense Nua Grang, meaning like fossilized kind of stone, very hard and condensed. And you can see on the surface here, around the Buddha, or the Khun Phaen, if you want to call it that, Saire Tong Kham gold flakes attached through sucking in the oil into the wet clay as it was pushed into the block press, with gold powder floating in Naman Pajau Taksin poured into the block press, and then the wet clay pressed into the shape of the amulet. And you can see rising on the surface a kind of bubbly appearance, which is of course the rising up of the finer powders of Phong Prai Guman and the sinking in of the bigger pigment molecules of the Wan Sabu Luad, which is condensing like stone. And this gold, you can't scrape it off with your fingernail or anything. Yeah. You would look here, you see this pillar here has a little line on the side, would make it a Pim Sao Mi Sen, which people say that the block press of 2515, you always make more than one block press in case the first one breaks halfway through. And that's why some of them have this line on the side of the pillar, because there was more than one 2515 block press, I'm afraid. The curve here is notable. You can use that. I don't usually like to make people look at the pim. You look at the Muan Sarn, the clay, and the presence of the sticky rice, authentic Wan Sabu Luat, the aging and the shrinking. You look on the Sankati chest here. The aging and the shrinkage causes the hot yup, the cracks, which is what they called the tag like the crackled ivory effect. Yeah. And the back face. And I wouldn't call this Nua Dang. So this is a study of Khun Phaen amulets of the type Nua Dang red powders. I would call this actually almost Nua Chompu because it looks pinkish. Which means, and this deep red, you can see much deeper. And has a slight powdery, it's Nua Grang. Stony, marbled, but you can see a very slight bit of dry powdery present effect in it, dryish powders, which means it also has Punkin Mag, the more pinkish betel nut cement used to put on the areca nut and betel leaf. The betel leaf, you put a bit of cement on it, put the areca nut inside and chew it, and the monks would chew it. So this pink bit on the side here you can see, and on the rear face you can see around here the presence of Punkin Mark. And once again around the edges you can see this dried effect. So let's have a look at the real McCoy. And so here we have 1441, the real McCoy. And if you were wondering why I'm now so far away, it's because I was using this lens. It's a very cheap lens, about 10 bucks from Lazada. And I'm going to put it back on shortly, but just too much light, not good. Show you a general overview of the amulet. This is with Takut Mahapra, and it is one of the certificated as said already, 1441. Yeah, and I will call it Muan Sarn ผสมปูนกินหมากข้าวเหนียวสุกและผงไพรกุมารลงใส่แร่ทองคำ and there's a little bit too much light here. It's a bit, you can see it's darker than it's actually appearing because of the light. It's more, I drop the light, it's more a bit like that, yeah. So I'm now going to put the lens on so we can look at it more closely. As you can see, the ridges around here, which should be present. And we're going to have a look at the Muan Sarn again because this video is a study of the Muan Sarn. So, Ong Ti Song 1441, now in close up, the real McCoy. So here we have it, the real McCoy, and we will now close in so that we can study the Muan Sarn. And I try hold with two hands to stop wobbling. And you can see, once again, the Wan Sarn, but with the slight presence of a pinkish tone with Poon Kin Mak, but very little Poon Kin Mak. And if you put on the side here, you can see the rubbly marbled effect, which is the presence of Khao Niao Suk. And we can see now the gold powders affixed through the oil as they sucked into the wet clay and it dried and became one substance. You can't scratch this off. This actually is not a Pim Sao Mi Sen. There is no line. Now we see close up. And you can see the sticky rice presence. And Wan Sarn is what makes it very dense clay, rocky kind of appearance, not dry and powdery, rather very dense, more like marble. And the sticky rice gives it this rubbly effect here, along the Sankati sash, yeah. And you can see on the edges also some pinkish Poon Kin Mak, but also you can see on Prat Grut such as Prat Somdet, Grut Klong Khom, and some Somdet, Wadakang, you can see pinkish crab, which is a kind of bacterial mildew. Here you can see the Pong Prai Guman and Pong Putakun, Pong Lop coming between the ridges here of the block press. So we go into the rear face now. Lots of Sai Re Tong Kam gold powder flakes affixed. Get some bit more light now. It will change the color to make it look more pink than it is. It's more red than pink. And make the gold look more like it's light yellow. You see, look at that. If I take the light off, then it goes darker. But on the rear face, because of the presence of so much gold, yellow and red makes a more orangey pinkish effect. And so the gold tint shimmer over the surface detracts from this deeper red color, which is why also why the rear face has a slightly less deep red tone to it. But if we look on the edges here, you can see the deep red tone. And the shininess on this piece here shows you it's drying and aging. Yeah. Nurgun, the extra meat, and the insertion of the Takrut Mahapra. The camera is jumping on its own. Yeah, so this one has a very lot of coating on the rear face. Yeah, quite difficult to see. So I use here the edges. Am I zoomed in? Yeah, I'm zoomed in. Use the edges to see the Muan Sarn and the aging, and also the cob, the edge of the amulet, to see the rockiness of the aging. Let's just zoom out a little bit to get a little bit more clarity. Bit less close in, but more clarity. And I want to just take the light a bit further away. There you go. The beauty of the summa, the ganok, the flamed arch. Very beautiful. This angle is more in shade, so you can see a different. There's the color a bit more closer to reality. That's much more closer, but the gold isn't. Even to my naked eye, I'm not seeing this actual color. This is closest to the actual color I can get on camera. If you look at the chest there, in the middle here, you can see that is about the actual color. But to the eye, and you see here, it's dark, but it has a slight pinkish tone to it, which means the presence of Wan Sabu, Lut, and Punkin Mark. There's no orangey tone, so no Wan Dok Tong, or very little if any. I would suppose not at all. And these edges, yeah. So let's close in again. So there we had องค์ที่สองพระคุณแผนเนื้อแดง red powders เนื้อว่านสบู่เลือดผสมปูนกินหมากข้าวเหนียวสุกและผงพรายกุมารลงสายแร่ทองคำ would be the proper way to say everything that's in it. Certificate number 1441 if you wish to contact me on line ID Thailand Amulets. Not at, just Thailand Amulets, or email me at thailandamulets@outlook.com, or you might see in the shop. But if you're a VIP or you want to buy out of store and save me the time photographing, writing 70 Photoshop cuts of each close-up, and just inquire about the amulet and buy out of store through communication, then I drop up to 20% on amulets. As to my VIP private sales who are in private contact with me and messaging, they know their own prices, each person, because different people spend different amounts, and some collectors collect a heck of a lot compared to others, and of course people who spend a lot get better discounts than people who spend a little. That's normal. So that was องค์ที่สอง, a very nice one, with for those who like red and to understand the Muan Sarn powders in each different individual item, amulet. So there you go. Khun Phaen, Phrai Kuman, Pi Ning Ha, 2515, Luang Putim, Isariko, Wat Laharn Rai. Number 1441. Very nice indeed. Very nice indeed. You see the bang Pong Prai Kuman here coming up. So on to the next one we go. So we can now have a look at องค์ที่สาม which is certificate number 1432. Once again, a certificated model of little importance to me, but for documentation, so people can actually ask and inquire as well. Easy to say, oh, I'm interested if you could tell me, do you send to my country, or I would like to buy number 1 certificate 1432. If it doesn't have a certificate, I will tell you a number. So this one in Nua Dang, I thought I would show Nua Jat, yeah, Nua Jat, because I've been showing you two Nua Grang. This is Nua Jat. It's also Grang, it has the marbled effect, but it's much more Nua Jat in the sense it has the dry powdery surface effect. It's actually Nua Grang, but because of the dry powder, Phong Prai Guman and Phong Lop risen to the surface, it looks like Nua Jat. Some people would say Nua Jat. Nua Jat is actually much more powdery and looks like it might kind of like sand, yeah, like a sandy effect. And this from a distance looks like a sandy effect a little bit. But when you come close up, you can see, especially on the Sankati sash here, on the sash here, here's the point, I don't have, use on the sash here, yeah, along here, is the most protrusive bit, and that's where you can see the shiny Nua Grang. But this one, the fine Phong Prai Guman powders have risen to the surface, all over the surface, yeah. And once again, talking of Wan Sabu Lut, this is Nua Wan Sabu Lut, not with Poon Kin Mak, which is why it's a darker color, and also why the fine powders have risen to the surface, because the molecules of the pigment of Wan Sabu Lut are bigger molecules than the molecules of chalk powders and Phong Prai Guman bone powders, which are much finer ground, Phong Lop, Rusi, chalk, Yantra inscription powders, yeah, they're much finer, like bang, like talc. They're very much like talc powders. So they rise to the surface as the wet clay contracts over time, and the heavier molecules of the Wan Sabu Lut in this case will condense and give this stony condensed effect, along with the presence of Khao so it gives the broken or lumpy effect. The lumpy effect, yeah, which I mean ridges or little mountains, yeah, like you can see around the nose and the forehead, yeah, on the right arm to our right side here, you can see bulging. So now let's just look at the rear face again. You can see also very white, talc-like shimmer of surface sheen, where the fine Phong Prai Guman and Phong Lop, Rusi, chalk, Yantra powders have been pushed up. This one has a twin Takut Salika, celestial magpie Takut inserted, yeah, and is a very fine example indeed. Extremely fine, extremely perfect cut, which is one thing in Wan Sabu Lut, the pim, the pressing is usually extremely clear cut, which is one thing that people like. They're usually quite thick. Because of the dense Muan Sarn, to press it properly, you usually need to make quite a thick press, because it's a more denser molecule, yeah, and results in this, the fine white powders being pushed to the surface, depending on the atmospheric conditions of the wearer, yeah, as well, on how it has been kept. So we're now going to look at it in close-up. So now we can see the Muan Sarn and the Phong Prai Guman, Phong Lop, Phong Puttakun, different people say different things. For the talc surface powders, already previously explained, and here we can see a piece of interior, Muan Sarn, which if you tipped in deep enough you would find white, which is the case with many ancient amulets, including Pat Somdet of Wat Dakang, ancient amulets, and that's something that I think only the great masters can explain, because they are red powders all the way through, but if you chip in deep enough you will find white, always. Not just with Khun Phaen, with many amulets that you would think you wouldn't find white inside. Well, this is white on top. I don't have the explanation for that. That's one of the things that's still on my trajectory of study, and nobody else can explain either, but a lot of experts, we talk about it, and that we use it as a sign, but that we can't explain it yet. But my explanation to now, because you have to start with theories and you throw one away when you get a better one until you arrive at the proper one that makes total sense and solves the case for you. Case closed. You close the case. Like in my video, Khun Phaen 15, case closed, which I would recommend you write Khun Phaen the way I type it, with Khun Phaen 15, case closed on YouTube, and you'll listen to what I say on that, because that actually closes the case. Many other videos close the case too, but I called that one case closed. So my theory is, you look at the surface, these whitish powders. So obviously, although it is red Muan Sarn clay, when it goes into the block press, obviously to me, look at that shiny nurgrang on the Sankati sash and the bulge on his left arm to our right, and the beauty of the slender hand of the Khun Phaen 15 compared to the thicker hand of the Songpon Yai, and thumb, upward pointing thumb of the Songpon Yai, and the alleged Khun Phaen 17. And look at these white powders from the Pong Lop, which I've already explained and mentioned, and Pong Prai Guman, white bone powders, right? So if you looked at them pressing the red Muan Sarn clay as a wet clay mixture into the block presses, you would see a red clay, consistent. But remember, within that red clay, although it's not visible, there is a proportion of white bone powders of Pong Prai Guman, and even more so, because it's like Ayurvedic, you only use a very small amount of Pong Prai Guman to empower the spirit. And a lot of the white powders will be Pong Lop, which is the 5 yantra powders, yeah? Pong Putakun, Pong Batamang, first 108 yantra written with Rusi chalk. Pong Putakun, 108 yantras, making a Rusi chalk stick from the powders that fell off the blackboard, the sacred blackboard, for making the first 108 yantra. Yeah. You make a chalk stick, a Rusi chalk, for inscribing yantra, and a sacred yantra board, and you inscribe another 108, and the powders, the residues you use from that is Pong Putakun the second time. And you use the powders from the second set of 108 yantra to make another Rusi chalk stick in which to inscribe a third set of 108 yantra, which then becomes Pong Trini Sing He. It's the same powder, yeah? So the 5 sacred powders are actually one powder in the end. because the first powder gets made into a chalk stick to make the second powder, and the second powder residue gets made into a chalk stick to make the third powder, right up to the fifth powder. So the 5 powders are Pong Batamang, 108 yantra. Make a chalk stick, make another 108, and the result is Pong Putakun. Do another 108 yantra with the chalk stick from that you make, and you have Pong Trini Sing He left over. So it's transformed from the first into the third powder. You make another chalk stick, Rusi chalk stick, to inscribe 108 sacred yant to make residue powders with, and you get Pong Itije, Pong Itaje, or Pong Itije, which sometimes has a reddish pinkish tone to it actually. Don't ask me why, but can be usually white, and sometimes take on a beigeish tone. I think that's because some masters mix in a bit of Wan Dok Tong or something, but usually should be white. And then make another stick to make the final powder, which is Pong Maharad, the great king powder, yeah, the king powder, which is why the king of all amulets is the Prat Somdet. Well, not why, but that's something I think. So we look here at these white powders are present within, and we see them pushed to the surface. So maybe that is why when you dig within what should be a consistently red powder all the way through and find a piece of white interior, it is maybe because some of the fine white powders pushed themselves into a ball within and did not get pushed to the surface. Because there are white powders in the red Muan Sarn, they're just not visible as a wet clay, but they are visible on the surface, which shows there is a white powder present. So that explains to me why, when you cut into an amulet that is not white in color, you can find white powders present inside. Makes sense or not? Does to me. So, nobody's ever solved that explanation, but that was my first attempt. I won't say it's right, I will say that is a rhetoric of why you can find white powders inside colored Muan Sarn amulets. Yeah. So this Nơ Dang is classic. For me, highly preferred. For other people, depends on your taste. I personally like this very clean, see the Wan Sabu Luat, less of the pink Chan Mak and Punkin Mak powders, and more of the Wan Sabu Luat blood soap herb powders, which I particularly like because of the rubbly effect. And you remember me talking about the Nurgern on the edges here, yeah? You can that sometimes it's so much that they flip it over and fold it. You can see here that it is flipped over and folded. And look at the age and the shininess on it. Am I zoomed in enough? Am I zoomed in enough? Yes, now I am. Look at that. Look at that fold of the Nurgern and the age, the rubbly effect of the edge, yeah? Of the chips. From pulling it out of the block press this way, upwards, you see you don't see it from the front. When you're pulling it upwards, you don't see it. You see it on the back, because when it was pulled upwards out of the block press, the wet clay on the edge gets pulled out a little bit from gravity. And so afterwards, when they bang, just make sure the amulet is perfect, they notice this extra piece of meat and they fold it over. Some temples just cut it off with a knife. In this particular edition, as in the amulets, the Pitta of Luang Putto of Wat Padu Chimpli, also these amulets of Luang Putim also have this method, and it's very good because it helps very much in knowing if it was hand pressed or if it is a factory fake press. because a factory doesn't have time to make cheap enough to make a profit amulets on fake amulets to do this. You can't create this effect with factory. Each one is different. You can only create that effect with each one individual hand pressed, which is not worth doing to replicate or fake an amulet. And there you can see white inside as well. There's my pen instead of my dirty finger. You can see white inside here and here, you see? Yeah, can see white. So there you go. The presence of white within colored Muan Sarn, and in this case in the study of Nơ Dang, red Muan Sarn of Khun Phaen 2515 amulets. Yeah, and now we look at the Wan Sarn. Focus on this a bit to see its denseness and talk about its large molecules and the small molecules of the white powder. Let's call it talc, sacred talc. Let's invent a terminology for English. The sacred talc. Talc doesn't sound like a sacred word, but it can become, if we use this word enough with each other, it's easy to communicate instead of all this Pongpudakun Pongtini Sing He. Just remember that's what we mean. And Pong Prai Guman and Pong Lop, everything I explained about the Rusi chalks making the 5 times 108 yantra powders. Yantra powders, if you like, I like to call them that. But we could talk about, say, the talcs when we're talking about Muan Sarn. So let's just talk about the sacred talcs, because the talcs are different. See, I'm already using the word. The sacred talcs with each amulet might contain different kinds of talc-like powders, meaning very fine powders, powders that are so fine that they are like talc. And talcum is actually, what is it? It's chalk, I don't know. But, and bacteria can also be called talc. Like if you have piercings, you have to clean them because your ears smell, or your nose piercing smells, or your nipple piercing, because this talc builds up. They call it talc as bacteria. In this case, this is what would you call it? Mildew, which is also bacteria, and the sacred powders and reactions. All of those things, not one of those things, all of those things. Yeah, a little bit of Sairet on Kam can actually be seen in certain portions, like on the Praget Mala, which is here. Here's the point here, and the Praget Mala you can see, and around the edges here you can see Sairet on Kam, gold. Yeah, in certain places, very little, but you can see. This might be a piece of Kuman bone, might be. And once again, the Nira, you can look at the age easily of the Nirgun on the rear face. And here we can see the powders. The whitish Ponglop, Yantra and Praiguman powders. And we look at the texture of the Muan Sarn. If you can see, just sorry about wobbling. If you can see here, these patches is from contraction, and the different discolorations and contractions look at the lines of the yantra, the protrusions of the bulging lines of the yantra. This is a yant noon, not a yant jom, meaning the yant is not impressed, it is obverse. It is, what is it? Converse and obverse. This is obverse, yeah? You can see that all protrusions, they're exposed to the atmosphere more, so they contract and harden more, and you get this shiny effect, like fossilized, yeah? As you do on the edges here. And here we have again that Nurgun pap folded over. That was a droplet of the wet clay as it was pulled out of the block press this way. Let's have a look at it. And then folded in afterwards. And here we can also see a bit of gold flake, gold powder, and the whitish mildew, the sacred talc. And here the contractions, again you can see the patches, the little patches and lumps is kaunyaosuk, sticky rice. But the patches come from contraction, yeah. Here we can see the patches, the lumps of sticky rice, bulging, and larger patches. And let's look at the rear face a little bit before I go on to the next one. A bit more light here, so it'll look more pinkish. It's actually a darker colour. If I take it away, that's a darker colour. Okay, that's okay. Try and get the real colour always. And can I zoom? I'm already zoomed in. You can see the edges, the broken edges of Nurgun around the rim, and you can see the sacred talc. Yeah, I'm getting used to remembering this new terminology now for Amulet School. So we have one phrase to cover everything I said about this kind of whitish, very fine powders. If it was a platform dead, it would be blurk hoi, seashell powders, and Pong Nga Sang, ivory powders coming up, and also the 5 sacred yantra powders, which end up as one because each one gets used to make the next one. It's 5 levels of 108 yantra. So it's different ingredients in different series of amulets, but you get the same effect that the finer powders, which are usually white, rise up to the surface through the drying and contraction of the wet clay as it dries over the years and contracts, and the larger molecule pigments of herbs and sacred powders coagulate into patches or remain stuck within the amulet. Don't rise too much to the surface, but they do. If not, you wouldn't be seeing them here. Yeah. But the finer powders, of course, are the first ones to get pushed to the surface as the clay dries, and the coarser, that's the word I was looking for, the coarser chunks are left further embedded, and the protrusions, such as the lettering and the yant and the Nurgun on the edges, here, always have this shiny aged effect, which shows you because they're most exposed to contact with the atmosphere. So So there you go, that was the third Ong Di Sam. Was it Ong Di Sam? Number 1432. Ong Di Sam 1432. It's a typical day. You can see the Saire Tongkam once again, the gold flakes. Let me get some more light. Lose a bit of the original colour, but give you some more clarity. I still got almost the original colour. I always like to show the Sankatit sash on the chest, because that is where you can see this fossilized marble defect again. It's the most protruded part. It's the most protrusive part. And to look for the Phaen, the sacred talc collecting in the recesses and around the edges of protrusions on the amulet is where you will see the most sacred talcs forming between the head and the ears, around the neck, in the armpits, around the chest, in the recess between the arms and the torso, between the hands, between the legs. These two lines on the Khun Phaen 15, these two lines here should also be studied. Yeah. And you might notice that the tan Iang is slightly tilted, yeah? Slightly tilted. But hand-pressed amulets that's why I'm saying don't look at the pim too much. The long elongated hand and beautiful thumb. The ears, the straightness of the ears. Look at the difference between the right ear and the left ear. I'm holding the lamp, the camera, and the so you can see the gold. I wish I could keep holding the lamp here actually. Let's see if I can do this. One moment. I'm cross-legged, so I need to open my legs so I can put the lamp in. Yeah, that's quite good. Let's close in. Oh, what a beautiful clarity now. It's a bit too much light, but it gives us a clarity like never before in this video. So you can see the Wan Sarn, and you can see the Khun Phaen or the sacred talcs, and the condensation of the most protrusive parts of the amulet, the Nuakan around the edge. Look at that green Khun Phaen on the edge here. Look at that. You see when you get a good magnification, good lighting. Just taking me till now to get this lighting, and I'm very uncomfortable how I'm filming this. But there you go, look at that patch. Wow, look at that chunk. Look at that chunk. And the Nuakan, let's look at this folded piece again. The Nuakan around the edges. Okay, so that was number 1432. Study of Muan Sarn, Khun Phaen, Nua Dang. Nawan Sabulat, blood soap herb with Khun Phaen or sacred talcs. sacred yantra powders and Pong Prai Guman, Wan Sabu Luat. This one I would say has actually no punkin mark in it, no pinkish, just red. And Saire Tongkam gold powders, just enough to embellish. Nice view of the greenish Pong Prai Guman, oxidized from being exposed to the atmosphere, and just enough Saire Tongkam gold flakes, and a beautiful, beautiful texture to the torso. This is what has Mita means has face and eyes, which means has a lot of detail for this amulet. So there you go. Let's move on to the next one for a study of the Muan Sarn of the next one of Khun Phaen Nua Dang. So you can see differences and know why and what Muan Sarn is in each one. Yeah? Let's go back again. Okay. So I think I'll do one more, and then, because I have another 17 to do, I'm going to have to split this into 3 or 4 or 5 videos. Yeah? So 1, 4, 3, 2. องค์ที่ 3 Khun Phaen 2515 เนื้อว่านสบู่เลือด เนื้อแดง red powders. Yeah, beautiful. This one is, now they're all beautiful, but now you see this close-up macro has just increased the lighting, better lighting. You see the beauty. The beauty becomes much more evident, right? Doesn't it? Doesn't it? Oh yes, of course it does. Especially when I don't wobble. Turn him around. Look at that. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? Good, we've got a good view now, so on to the next one. So, we're going to look at this one now, which is also classed as Nua Dang, Pim Niyom, Nua Si Dang as red, but which I myself class as Nua Chompu or Nua Punkin Mark, which would mean red pinkish powder, pink powders, pink Pong Prai Guman, with Khao Niao soup, sticky rice, and all the other powders I mentioned, the Pong Lop, Rusi Chalk, Yantra powders. Yeah, but because of this pinkish tone, as we can see here, very evident on the rear face and on the front face when you close in. And we're now going to look at the real McCoy here. You see all of these amulets down here. We're now on Ong TC, the 4th Ong. I'm going to stop the video after this because I'm afraid we're already getting into towards an hour and a half, and if not, it'll be very difficult to export and upload and also to watch. So we have about 18 or so, maybe 17 to 20 amulets in red to pink, from dark to light colors, with and without gold, to look at, but this video is covering the first 4. So this is going to be a study of the Muan Sarn of the Khun Phaen 2515 Luang Putin Wat Laharn, right? Part 1 first 4 amulets, but I'll be showing you many different kinds of Muan Sarn, such as this is a different kind, yeah, and even red toned but grayasad, yeah, so and other kinds. So you can be expecting in parts 2 and 3 and maybe 4, I don't know, further study of the Muan Sarn of red sacred clay type amulets of Khun Phaen, Praiguman and Butim, yeah. And this one is going to be the last one for today. And now that I had the light, sorry about the wobble, the phone is on a stand and it wobbles. It's a cheap stand from Lazada. I'm not advertising Lazada, but they have some cheap stuff. Muan Sarn ลองใส่แร่ทองคำผสมปูนกินหมาก So you can see a high presence of the blood red soap herb, blood soap herb. But you can also see, and you can see a high presence of it on the front, and although very red on the back, when we hold it like this, you can see the orangey pinkish tone, yeah? And when we hold it like this, also you can see an orangey pinkish tone. Now isn't that funny? Not really, because color is an illusion. White light, if you split it through a prism, it can go into different colors, and each color has many tones, yeah? Just the same as music. Yeah, you have 7 tones, but if you do semitones, it goes up to 7 tones, then you have an octave, yeah? So it's the same with colors. You have 7 colors of the rainbow, yeah? But each color has many tones. And that is because when the light catches a certain molecule, it reflects the light in different ways. And when we see red or pink, that's because the light is reflecting off the molecule in a certain way. But anyway, that's a scientific explanation. We still see them as orange, red and pink. So why is it on the back seeming to be more orangey pink than on the front, which obviously is seeming to be more reddish? Well, firstly, artificial light is creating an illusion. So let's go on the side to get rid of the illusion. And you can still see the pinkish color. So why? Why on the back does the color differ from on the front? I ask myself when I look at this, yeah? So I pose this question to you as students, or any know-it-alls, or people who have a good idea or a good theory and it might want to comment. Actually, I usually close comments on videos of Khun Phaen 15 because some people know nothing and have a big mouth. And to be quite honest, I'm not a Buddha yet. It stresses me up and it makes me think inauspicious thoughts. So I don't want that. So I think I'll close comments, unfortunately. So let me explain why. Try and answer this question. When you lay an amulet out to dry, you will usually lay it out this way, meaning you will lay it on a surface in the back, and you have a thing on earth called gravity, yeah? Now why would a finer powder like the orange pinkish pumpkin mark be heavier than the very dense Muan Sarn deep blood red blood soap herb powders, yeah? Why would they? Why would they fall through? Because the pigment of the Muan Sarn is a bigger pigment. molecule should fall through, but the smaller pigment has gone to the bottom as it was drying out. Yeah? First of all, that depends what weather was when they dried this batch out. Secondly, I used to do a trick in Amsterdam when I was a traveller with Papa Destroy, a French traveller and very, very drunk punk rocker, and a Dutch friend of mine called Plug. I used to be the fire breather and Plug, and Papa Destroy, Plug used to collect the money in the hat, my Plug's girlfriend, and Plug did fire breathing with me, and Papa Destroy did a chain escape and also broken glass, walking on broken glass or doing a headstand on it, and we would turn him around, or he'd lie down on it and we would stand on him, and then we would make money in Amsterdam on the lights are playing. Yeah, I used to make about $100 each in 3 15-minute shows, 3 of us, and then we would stop doing it and go to the club and get drunk. Anyway, I was a young kid, and we're talking about the Muan Sarn of Khun Phaen, Luang Tim. But anyway, I'm sure you enjoyed that story. I hope you did. Yeah, because I had to tell the story of the glass, because the secret of the glass, why can you stand on a load of broken bottles of glass, is because the smaller, sharp, pointy pieces point down and go to the bottom, and the big chunkier pieces, the points go downwards, and the flat pieces or the rounded pieces point upwards. So sharp points downwards and the base points upwards, like stalagmites, not stalactites, stalagmites, the ones that point downwards in the cave. So for some strange rule of physics, in that particular situation and set of circumstances, not like the pongputakun that rises to the surface through the drying and gets pushed up. That happens after, yeah? But in this case, the color through the drying, before it was dry enough to take off, had already sunken through the mysterious scientific process of the smaller, sharper or more pointy molecules. There were maybe the molecules of Punkin Mark, which is actually broken seashell, which would mean there were probably quite sharp crystalline pieces, which would make them like arrows. Therefore they would point downwards and then just tunnel through the clay down into the bottom of the base here. Sorry. When laid down here into the bottom of the base, yeah, because seashell powders would do that, yeah. So anyway, not sure, but it's a theory. It's a theory. It's just something I noticed, that the rear face is red, but you can see that the Punkin mark has taken its residence much more on the rear face than on the front face. So I would assume that the same way the glass, the small and sharp pieces of glass, through pointing downwards through gravitational force, somehow forced their way through the heavier, thicker pieces, whereas one would usually think the big pieces of broken glass would go to the bottom and the small sharp pieces would point upwards. But that's not what happens. And so it depends on the shape of the molecule. If it's yantra powders, the shapes of the molecules are fine, probably round, and are pushed upwards. And if it's Punkin mark, which is broken seashell, much like glass, would be sharp and pointy. They would point down and tunnel through to the bottom. And therefore, the rougher red powders would stay on the top while it's drying on the, whatever they lay it on, the table or the maigadan, or you lay it on many different things for different effects. Yeah. Somehow the same effect. Makes sense to me. Anyway, let's now look at it in macro. Even not in macro, we can see that this Long Sai Re Tong Kam, Neo Wan Sabu Luat, I will call, but I will say that has a high presence of Punkin mark on the rear face, and Salika Takut Salika Ku, and also less Sai Re Tong Kam on the rear face, which allows for a nice study. And we'll see the edges all in macro now, with Ong TC, and the final for this first part 1 video of the study of Muan Sarn amulets. I said Nua Chompu at the beginning, but as we have closed in and look at it, it is not so Chompu. It looks Chompu here on the certificate. That is the camera they took at the show, whereas this is another camera, it's an iPhone, and this shows the color much more clearly. Now I have good lighting, so that just look at, you can see now the slightly different color tone, although here is also similar. But in the center here, as usual, you can see so much Wan Sabu Luat, so much, and the rocky effect here on the face. Also Minamita, very beautiful ears and face and nose details. Beautiful. So let's go into macro now. So now, with this final Ong TC exhibit number 4, certificate number 1431, Khun Phaen Phrai Kuman, Neo Wan Sabu Luat, Long Sai Re Tong Kam, or Nua Dang. But as you can see, once again, when you twist and shimmer, you see a little bit of pinkish tones, pinkish orangey pinkish tones here. Let's have a look here actually now. We're going into macro. And you can see how certain pieces, certain areas, look pinkish and some look darker red. So there's a separation here. But as we get close, yes, here you can see around the knot here, you can see it's lighter color than on the protrusive area. Whereas the protrusive area always seems to gather the Wan Sabu Luat mากกว่า talking Thai, Wan Sabu Luat more around the takrot. You can also see around the takrot, around the takrot, you can also see a bit more pinkish color around. And then on the edges again, where the protrusive area is, around the nurgurn of the edges. Always notice this left edge is usually more protrusive. Not always, but usually you will notice a bit less protrusion on the right side than the left, with this block press at least. And you can see the Sai Re Tong Kam, gold flakes. And this is classic. It's not Chompu. I said Chompu, sorry. Put the light back on. It's when the light goes to the side, you can see some presence of the Punkin mark. So it is Neo Wan Sabu Luat ผสมปูนกินหมาก but the amount of Punkin mark, the lighter colored, see, you come close and it all goes dark, yeah? Whereas you go away a bit, and you can see lighter colored areas within the yantra, within the yan, and other areas. And here on the top, you can see greenish white powder, Phong Prai Goman. And as I said, when you cut into a red clay amulet, you can see other chips here where it's broken, and it's red inside, right? But then again, here is a chip, and what do you see? White. And we were talking about the presence earlier on in this lesson of the study of Muan Sarn of red Khun Phaen, Praigoman 2515 BE amulets, of the different Muan Sarn contents and the aspects. We were talking about that. But if you cut into an amulet, here you've got another break, you can see pinkish. It's red on the protrusion, pinkish on the inside. That's also theoretically something to consider, that the most protrusive areas are also the darkest areas, whereas if you look on the surface areas, they are lighter and more pink. So obviously, the white Putakun and Phong Prai Goman powders are so fine, they're being pushed to the surface, but also on the most protrusive areas, the Khao Niao Suk and the Wan Sabu Luat seem to be binding together, or the Khao Niao Suk is perhaps absorbing the Wan Sabu Luat, but not the Punkin mark, because Wan Sabu Luat is a herb and therefore soluble, but Punkin mark is ground up seashell, the pink seashells, which is a cement used to chew up, put in areca beetle leaf and chew areca nut, and does not dissolve, it's not soluble. So the non-solubility of the pinkish powders of the cement, areca leaf cement, areca nut beetle leaf cement, maybe that's not why it does not protrude to the surface as much, because it does not absorb into the Khao Niao Suk, and it is the Khao Niao Suk that becomes most evident on, let's say, the Sankati sash here of the Buddha, and the face, and the arms and legs, and lotus, and the Kuman, and the pillars, and the Ganok, and the Sum, yeah, because they protrude the most, yeah, they protrude the most. So that is not statement, that is philosophy for contemplation. Look on the edges here again, where you can break, it's broken slight on the rims, edges here. You can see inside the broken clay. For example, somewhere here, you can see a little bit of white, and in other places where it breaks, you cannot see. You can see red, yeah? Look all around. I'll take my pen away now so we can look all around. Okay, I'll do it like that. With respect, you can see it's broken here. You can see inside. It's not white, but it's lighter color than the most protrusive areas of the surface, of the exterior surface of the amulet. And then here, use my dirty finger, you see pinkish on the surface here. Whereas on the surface of the arm and the Sankati sash and the face, you see deep red. So obviously, there's a separation of the pumpkin mark, which is purpley pink, and the Muan Sarn, which is deep red. And that is probably something to do with the khao niao suk. But it might be to do with oxidization of the atmosphere upon the most exposed surfaces to the atmosphere, and the lesser exposed surfaces, which are more covered in gold, don't discolor and darken as much, because oxidization causes darkening. So there you go. But probably not, because here looks pinkish, and that is exposed. But also, as you can see, Pong Yan, very fine yantra powders, what sacred talc, a little bit, not much on this one, obviously held in by the sealing of the gold leaf, which you would usually see. If there was no gold leaf here, you would see the sacred talcs, right? You can see around the ears where there's no gold leaf a bit of sacred talc forming. In the small areas where there is no gold leaf, you can see sacred talc forming. And here you see a break, and it's red inside. And where did we see a break where it was white inside? Up here. Yeah. And here is not white inside, showing it is red all the way through, but then again it isn't. Yeah. So that is something to peruse and to deepen the study of the Muan Sarn with, as I sounded like a New York accent then, as the Muan Sarn with Irish influence on the New Yorker accent. You see the pinkish and reddish. Look at the two-tone. Nua champu mai, is that pink Khun Phaen, or is it Nua dang, red Khun Phaen? And that's why I don't like to use the phrase that most people use, which is Nua dang, meaning red Khun Phaen, red Muan Sarn. I like to use the phrase of the Muan Sarn, define the Muan Sarn. So I would say this is Nua Wan Sarn ผสมปูนกินหมาก one spoon เลือด herb with ปูนกินหมาก pinkish cement และข้าวเหนียวสุก and sticky rice และผงไพรกุมาร and ผงไพรกุมาร and they should actually also say และผงวิเศษ with special powders, meaning the yantra powders, because they are almost always used in all sacred powder amulets, actually, if the temple can get hold of them. So there you go. On TC number 1431 for anybody interested to contact about a specific amulet, and a slow look at the exhibit itself, giving you time to examine a little better the beauty and of course the Muan Sarn and its aspects, its aging, its contraction, its features, its content, its authenticity, the theories behind my attempted explanations of the effects. Look at that greenish Pong Prai Kuman again. For those who love the fluffy Khun Phaen, this is a beautiful amulet. This is a beautiful amulet indeed. There you go again, the pinker color. And you can see red and pink and the white. What a mixture together there. That is to show separation of the three major powders. Shame there's not a chunk of sticky rice there, as you could say. Then there's all the four major ingredients. I always love looking at the arms, the hands, the sankati sash of the chest, the ears, the face, the praget mala top knot with its curve, the beautiful ganok flamed arch. I love looking at the ridges along the edge because they show the aging and the authenticity and the content of the Muan Sarn, especially when they have a little chip showing different features within. You can see within, and the protrusions of the guman and the tanbua, the slightly tilted lotus days, and the pillars, the study of the pillars. As I said, I don't like people to focus on the pim until they have concluded the Muan Sarn, sacred powder ingredients. You can see this pinkish effect here. And you can see maybe the pinkish effect actually, maybe it's as deep red as this, and the pinkish effect is just due to the rising of the finer white powders, but I think not. If not, we would see more of these kind of powder rising to the surface. Like the second example I believe we looked at, or the third example we looked at, second or third, I can't remember, which had a lot of the yantra powders, Khun Phaen, risen to the surface. You do not see much here. You see, but not much. So I do not believe that would turn the red into pink. It is Punkin Mag. It is definitely Nuan Sarn Pasom mixed with Punkin Mag. Pasom means mixed with. And of course, Khao Niao Suk and Khun Phaen. You can see the broken, not broken, but like marbled, fossilized, stony, rubbled, uneven effect of the sash and the face because of the presence of sticky rice within this, and the fluffy effect of the surface around the Buddha from the Saire Tongkam fluffing up and the Khun Phaen, which always gives that fluffy effect. But with the red amulets, I love their clarity and their nögreng. This very, I call it like a wet, dry wet. It's dry, but it looks wet because it's shiny like marble. The marbly texture of nödang, of red tone powders, be it Punkin Mag or Wan Sarn. And I like both nöjat and nögreng, dry sandy powders or the stony effect ones, and also very fluffy ones I like look very powerful, necromantic Khun Phaen exploding out of the amulets, where you don't see as much detail, but the amulets look extremely necromantic and powerful. But they all are with Khun Phaen. But of course, it depends on people's tastes. And for collectors like me, and those of you who are collectors also, it's nice to have one of every type, isn't it? For those who can afford to collect, of course, to study and to just have one of each. That's what we collectors are like. We devotees need one. As a devotee, we need one for Busha, You don't need more than one. But, well, I just bought a second motorbike. I have a 1200cc Harley. I bought a 500cc Royal Enfield. Why? Well, you might have a red Khun Phaen and see a blue one and decide you like as well and you want one. But you only need one as a devotee to protect and bring you blessings. But don't forget, people seek magic, people seek blessings, people seek protection, but people seek beauty, people seek collection. Your reasons for wanting an amulet like this can be one or multiple. And so I don't judge people for why they want one, be it for spiritual, magical reasons or collection reasons or both. With me it's both, of course, and for study, to study each one, to study each amulet. If you possess one of each, then you can study one of each. Oh, I've got a mosquito on my face, I'm sorry. A moment. So there you go. One last look at the Muan Sarn of ONTC. Yeah? Certificate number 1431 with Takut Salikaku. Beautiful amulet. Absolutely beautiful. As were all the previous ones. And similar Muan Sarn, some of them drier with the crackly white powders risen, and some more greng, marbly like this one. And one which was very more like tar bronze, more like with the painted bronze than Sai Re Tongkam, which was almost completely covered in gold. All beautiful in their own way. Khun Phaen 2515 BE หลวงปู่ทิมวัดละหารไร่พิมพ์นิยมพิมพ์ใหญ่นิยมเนื้อแดง red powders เนื้อว่านสบู่เลือดผสมปรุงกินหมากข้าวเหนียวสุก and ผงไพรกุมาร So, John Spencer for Buddha Magic Project, Amulets TV, and Amulet School. And of course, I share as a VIP update with my VIP friends and clients. Thank you very much. Signing off.